I've been trying to start this video for the last 10 minutes, but I can't stop eating because these chips and salsa are so good. But anyway, for all you people out there who love important or serious topics, you're in luck. I'm revisiting the subject of networking. I just had a conversation with Captain Solo about a conversation I had with Sergeant Willie Pete about the Black Network. Pete was making the argument that when men are raised by women or raised in the matriarchal system, they aren't taught proper leadership skills and therefore they lack the drive to lead things and own things. I told Captain Solo that I could see how that would be true in the context of a relationship, but when it comes to building a network and starting businesses, I don't see it. Now, I do see how that could play a role, don't get me wrong, but that as the main or the only reason, no. I think it has more to do with the society that we live in and some things that happened to us in the past. One thing that you're definitely going to need in order to have a network is business ownership. But in our society, American culture that is, we're told from little kids that you go to school, you graduate, you go to college, you graduate and get a job. You've made it when you've secured a job at some company somewhere and you're pulling in a big salary. If you look at American television or sitcoms or whatever, how often does the father in the family own a business? The only one I can think of off the top of my head is Sanford and Son. They owned a junkyard. But other than that, the other shows I can think of off the top of my head, the father came home in a suit and a briefcase, or he came home wearing the uniform he had to wear at work. And even if the father did have a high-paying job, a lot of times it would be a job like doctor, which is something that you can't pass down to your sons. Your son cannot take over your medical practice unless he too becomes a doctor. But anyway, if you ask American children, regardless of race, what they want to be when they grow up, I bet hardly any of them, unless their parents are business owners themselves, are going to say that they want to own a business. They're probably going to mention a job where they work for somebody else like policeman or fireman or teacher. Or they're going to mention a job that you can't hand down to your kids, like being a professional basketball player or a doctor. Most people of all races in this country, except for maybe recent immigrant populations, work for the quote-unquote man. I don't think even most white kids are encouraged to open a business when they grow up. In American culture, we, and by we I mean everybody, not just black people, in general we don't aspire to open businesses. So to act like that mentality is unique to black people, and then to go further and blame it on black women, I'm not seeing it. For the record, there are lots of black businesses, especially in majority black cities. But of course there could always be more. But also we need businesses that are bigger than just your average mom and pop type of businesses where you can only have like 0 to 10 employees. When I was in college, I worked for an answering service, and it was run by this white couple, and they employed about 50 people. Mostly black, by the way. But anyway, my next point is that due to the way that the American dream and success has been defined in this country, people are going to see owning certain types of businesses as beneath them. Like, for example, a lot of Indians own gas stations, or they own Dunkin' Donuts. That means you may have to mop floors and clean bathrooms. That means that your customers may come in and not see you for the accomplished businessman that you are, but rather some dude behind a cash register. This means that you may have to wear a paper hat at work, or whatever uniform your franchise requires. I think a lot of Americans are too proud for that, especially black people, given our history. Success means you graduate from college and get a good job in a big fancy building, and you'll walk out through the lobby and some other guy is doing the mopping. I remember when I was still in school and I was working at Golden Corral, and one day this black lady who looked like she was about 45 years old came in, and she was covered in gold. She had like gold earrings, gold necklace, gold bracelet. She had gold teeth, gold rings on every finger. Anyway, she was waiting for a to-go order, so while she was waiting I was chatting her up, and we got on the subject of what she did. She owned a business where she would go around and clean houses or office buildings. So we continued to talk for a while, and I guess she got a good vibe off of me and she offered me a job. But at that time, my mentality was, oh no, I'm going to school. One day I'll be calling you to clean my house. Now, of course, I didn't say that to her and I didn't take that attitude with her, but that's just the mentality that I had. And I think that attitude that I had is typical for black Americans. For us, success doesn't come in the form of having to clean up after other people and possibly do toilets and floors and windows. There are lots of black men out there who have the brains and the ability to open a business, but instead they're working in a high-paying job at some company, and perhaps business ownership was never presented to them as an option, regardless of how they were raised. And someone was saying, well, where would these men get the drive to want to be business owners and to run things if they were raised in a matriarchal system? Well, I think that's the wrong question to ask. There are lots of black men who have graduated from college and they're working at a company somewhere making a good salary. So a better question to ask would be, why would these men go open businesses when society has already told them that they are successful by holding down the job that they hold? And I think a lot of these men have the idea that, well, we're integrated now, so we don't have the need to make our own stuff. But foreigners come over here and they don't see themselves as part of American society, and for them, owning a business is where it's at. And a lot of times they come over here and they have thick accents, or they have educational credentials that aren't accepted over here. So if they want to make a decent wage, they have to open their own business. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a Chinese restaurant and the people in there can't even half talk. English, that is. But they don't need to, because all they have to be able to do is ask you what you want, tell you what the price is, and take the money. But anyway, that brings me to my next point, necessity. I discussed this in my last video I made about networking. I think it was called We Need a Reason to Network. The only time I really hear black people talking about how they need a network or they need this or that is when they get fired from a job or can't find a job. But as soon as they do find that job, all is forgotten. It used to be that when we were excluded from something, we would just go and make our own. But nowadays, if anybody dares to try to keep us out, we'll sue to get in. If we can't sue, we'll rally and picket and cause enough disturbance to pressure the people to let us in. So again, black men or black people don't see the need to network, regardless of whether they came from a matriarchal system or not. And another reason I don't think that the matriarchal system is what causes men not to network is because if you look at gang members, a lot of them came from single parent homes. But a gang is a network. As far as I know, a blood from one city can go to another city and hang with the bloods there. Or at least I know it works that way for MS-13. If you can go to a city and state that you've never been to, but automatically you've got homies and friends that got your back, that's a network. And it's a network that was born out of necessity. If you go back to the origins of a lot of these gangs, you'll find that it started out with just a bunch of boys who band together to help protect themselves or protect their neighborhood. That type of urgency or necessity is missing in the general population of black people. The only time we start worrying about working with each other or building something is when something happens. But as long as everything's okay, nobody's trying to network. Now, there was an example given of a married couple, and the wife makes $250,000 a year and the husband makes $90,000. Now, supposedly, this man was raised in a matriarchal household, so he feels it's okay for his wife to make more money than him. And in this case, way more money than him. Again, I agree that a man being raised by a woman only, or being raised in a household where the woman wears the pants, wouldn't mind being outdone by a woman in a relationship. But that still doesn't explain the absence of a network. First of all, if you make $90,000 a year, you have made it by society standards. There is nothing else that you need to do, as far as being successful is concerned, that is. There are plenty of white people and other non-black people who are making $90,000 a year on a job, and they're not thinking about a network or starting their own business either. And this goes without saying, but all white people are not part of a network. All white people do not have somebody they can call up when they need a job who can give them one. The big white network is a myth. Second of all, even if he went back to school and got more training and got more degrees so he would be making more money than his woman, that's still not having a network, that's still not owning a business. He is still going to work for somebody else who can fire him. Also, $250,000 a year is a pretty hefty salary and tough to beat. It's possible that even if he did open up a business, he still wouldn't be bringing home more money than her after he paid expenses and taxes. So even though this guy is being outdone in the income department by his wife, he's still a winner by society's standards. There needs to be a reason for him to feel like he needs to network or build things or own things, and right now there just isn't one. He's got a $90,000 a year job. What does he need a network for? Why does he need to start a business? A lot of times necessity is the mother of invention. Once upon a time there was a very popular black male YouTuber who used to make lots of videos about black women. But one day he got kicked off of YouTube, so he went to another site and tried to set up camp there. Well, they eventually kicked him off there too. He may have tried a few other sites, but again he kept getting kicked off. So what happened? Well, since there was still a lot of demand for this guy's commentary, someone developed a site for people who had been kicked off of YouTube. Why? Because it was necessary. Why that? Because they got kicked out and they couldn't get back in. If certain people hadn't been kicked off of YouTube, would that site exist? Not for me to answer, but just think about it. There has to be a reason to network. I know you think there is, but there's really not. There's not one yet. If there was a reason, we'd be doing it. Foreigners like Koreans, Indians, Arabs, they have a reason. They're strangers in a foreign land. Black people used to be, but now we're integrated. Maybe it would be better if we pretended that we're segregated. And as far as this whole matriarchy thing, that's fine if you want to explore the origins of things or how things got to be the way they are. But it seems to be being used by some people to blame yet another thing on black women, or to excuse certain men for why they're not networking. Oh, we can't work with these men because they're pussy-whipped mama's boys raised in the matriarchal system. Okay, well, are the black men who were raised in the patriarchal system, are they networking? Even if a boy has his father in the home and the father is head of household, that doesn't necessarily mean he's teaching his son to go out there and build things or own a business. He could just be encouraging his son to go to college and get a job. And then some people say, well, we don't have enough patriarchal men. Well, there are other races in this country in much smaller numbers, and they're able to network. Why? Because they have a reason. Even if we take this matriarchal thing to be 100% the cause, okay, fine, what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to stay at, well, we can't do nothing because there's too many matriarchal men out here? Okay, so you identified the sickness, now what's the cure? Instead of coming up with reasons why you aren't networking or can't network, as in the matriarchy, why don't you concentrate on coming up with reasons to network? Reasons to network are, you're not fully integrated into a society even though you live in it. That applies to a lot of illegals. They got language barriers and citizenship barriers, but they still work together. Another reason to network is that you've been locked out of certain opportunities. Instead of picketing and suing to get back in, make your own. It's a blessing in disguise for foreigners who come over here and don't see themselves as part of the collective. It forces them to work together with their own. Well, we don't have to depend on each other. We don't have to work together. We can go spend our money with other people and even merge into their communities, or at least we think so. But anyway, I'll just cut it off here before I start repeating myself. Laters.